Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast and YouTube program. Thanks for joining us. We are talking Chiefs today after their 17-10 victory over the LA Chargers with beat writer Jesse Newell and columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam McDowell. It occurs to me, guys, that the last time there was a Chiefs victory while the Royals were preparing to play in the postseason was in 2015. I don't know if there was a Chiefs victory, but the Chiefs were playing in 2015, and the Royals were prepared to meet the who were they going to play? The Houston Astros, right, in the ALDS. A reason I bring this up is we're recording this on Tuesday about an hour before first pitch for the wild card series between the Royals and the Baltimore Orioles. So by the time you hear this, you'll either be in a happy mood for the Royals or maybe a go get them in game 2 mood for the Royals. But let's start there for a second. Vahe, it seems to me that the Kansas City sports world has changed in that last decade when we were thinking about the Chiefs and the Royals at the same time this late into the year.
Well, you're sure right, Blair. And this is I'm reminded of a conversation we had recently that at that point, you look at this, the Chiefs were in a streak of being 10-13 from the loss to the Colts in the playoffs to the 1-5 start in 2015. And to a point you made to me, you had to wonder what Andy Reid's future was at that point. And now, obviously, the Chiefs have played in 4 Super Bowls in 5 seasons, and they're hoping to become the first team to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. Right now, when you've got that air of anticipation, at least as we speak right at this moment, about the Royals, too. So it's a pretty nice juncture in Kansas City sports history, and reminds me of something else I learned from you, which is that 2015 was the only calendar year in which both franchises went to the same postseason. At 4-0, I think we can feel like the Chiefs are headed to the postseason, but a lot of season left.
Well, especially after beating what we all think is their top division rival on the road on Sunday, going out to LA and beating the Chargers 17-10. The victory, of course, to make the Chiefs 4-0 was the biggest piece of news that came out of that game. The other big piece was the injury to wide receiver Rashee Rice. And I think we've discussed that, or at least I saw a comment on one of the social media outlets that if the Chiefs hadn't had the success that they've had over the last few years, we might be shaking our head and remembering that was a very pre-Mahomes Chiefs-like injury that felled Rashee Rice, hitting his knee on the helmet of Patrick Mahomes while trying to make a tackle after a Mahomes interception. But as of this moment, again, Tuesday, early afternoon, Jesse, there's still a little bit of information out there about Rashee Rice's injury. At least we're not 100% sure what the extent of the injury.
Yeah, at this point, no news is good news. It means that they're not confirming that it's a torn ACL, which is obviously would cost Rashee Rice his entire season. So I think there still remains hope out there that potentially you keep looking at these scans and you find something different than what the initial prognosis was. So I'm sure the Chiefs are crossing their fingers here, but I can kick it to Sam here. Without him, even if it's an extended amount of time, let's say it's, season is still something that could very much happen, but at least you would think a month and a half to 2 months without him. Where do the Chiefs turn? Do they go to their own roster? It's sort of a tricky situation because the Chiefs, you sort of need a guy to come back and have familiarity with the offense to step right in, to have familiarity with Pat Mahomes, who loves to have guys kind of do different things as part of their routes. But I don't know who that person is anymore. They basically have brought back every guy that left the roster and came back and has some juice left. So I'm kind of interested to hear what Sam thinks about what the Chiefs should do moving forward at the receiver, or if they just kind of roll with what they got.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest picture to me is just like this is a significant loss. And for all that the Chiefs dealt with a year ago in their wide receiver room, or even 2 years ago, their first year without Tyreek Hill, like the group they had was the group they planned to have. And this is the first time that they've lost such a significant piece of their offense that this wasn't what they were planning on. I mean, their revitalization of their passing game and throwing short was originally built around Travis Kelce. It's since been built around Rashee Rice. I mean, he not only led the league in receptions, but he led the league in yards after the catch too. And that's what the Chiefs offense has become is, okay, you can't get the yards before the catch in the air. You're going to have to get them after the catch. And Rashee Rice is the prototypical receiver that you need to facilitate that game plan. And so there's no doubt that the Chiefs are in, to me, a worse spot than they were a year ago when all we talked about was their wide receivers, and worse than 2 years ago when all we talked about was what are they going to do without Tyreek Hill. This is a loss unlike what they've had. And so, yeah, I mean, I think absolutely they should make calls. But look, I mean, we're 4 weeks into an NFL season. It's not exactly as though teams that we might think are not going to make the playoffs, that we might think should be thinking about the future, are thinking about the future. I mean, you even think about, I know a name out there, for example, is Amari Cooper. I don't know if the Browns are ready to give up on a season yet. I think that their GM and head coach have to be thinking, are we going to get fired at the end of the season? And if you're thinking about whether or not you need to save your job, I don't know that you're thinking about the future and contemplating what you need to do for the future in that scenario.
So Xavier Worthy looms pretty large now going forward, and had a big impact on Sunday's game with his touchdown reception and the big third down catch that sealed the game in the final 2 minutes. Vahe, I know you wrote about Xavier Worthy today. Are the Chiefs prepared to step up and make him the feature wide receiver?
I'll be obviously interested in what you guys say about this. My thought is he's ready to keep growing, and I think add incrementally more than he's ready to be, getting 10 targets. I don't think that's what's going to come to pass. But I do think what we saw in this game Sunday tells you he's not just a one-trick wonder or a one-hit pony, however you want to put it. That I think there's been a little bit of a perception of him that he's really fast and that it's kind of all or nothing. And I think what he showed us, or certainly showed people who didn't understand that, is that he can contribute in other ways. And Sam wrote really extensively and directly about the play at the end of the game. And I'll turn it to you, Sam, but one last thought on it is that all this stuff seems to reflect one of the most valuable things that he can have, which is the trust of Mahomes at this stage. And Patrick has made the point all along that he understands routes and concepts. Part of his issue is going to be his he's kind of slight still and he's still learning. But so I think he'll add a little bit each week, but I don't think you go from 12 targets to Rashee Rice to 12 targets to Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the luxuries you had when you had your full complement of wide receivers was bringing him along slowly. And you no longer have that luxury. Like, Xavier Worthy is going to have to be more invested in your playbook than he previously was. Having said that, I agree with you, Vahe. I mean, this needs to be ideally a layering on process, because I don't think he's ready to be a number one wide receiver. There's still questions about what his talent level at this league is beyond just the speed. I mean, yes, that was a great play that the Chiefs had. That was a speed-driven play, which is why I do think that the end play of the game, the last third down of the game, is a more significant play, because, I mean, look, he recognized that play in Atlanta too, recognized that Rashee Rice ran the wrong route and adjusted his route midair. Like, there's some awareness that he has that I think some of the guys they've asked to bring along rather quickly did not have that same sort of awareness. So there's some signs that he can be more integrated into a playbook that calls for receivers to be aware of what defenses are doing, like react after the snap sort of stuff. Like, we've seen some signs of that. But like I said, I mean, they're going to whether or not they think he's ready or not, he becomes a elevated option within their own room that they're going to have to better prepare to be ready to play a higher or to receive a higher workload in the offense.
Let me also add, I mean, this is not exactly encouraging for the Chiefs, but the guys you have left that can most take on this role of go-to guy or have to step up are guys that are pretty injury prone, or you would figure would be injury prone.
I thought you were going somewhere else with the name there, Jesse.
We'll get there. We're going to get there.
No, I mean, but let's be honest. Like Travis Kelce, who's turning 35 this week, and Xavier Worthy, who I think the Chiefs have done a really smart job with him of like keeping him toward the sideline on some of these runs, on some of these pass routes to get him out of bounds so he doesn't take a bunch of hits. I mean, we're in the locker room with these guys afterwards, and I remember a game earlier this year, Xavier is kind of looking down. He's got this big bruise on his thigh, and he's not a very big dude. And like this happens in the NFL. It happens to everybody. I mean, even a guy like Carson Steele, he had extended carries 2 games ago, and he comes out of that and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sore. But, the Chiefs sort of could maybe scheme around that a little bit when it came to Xavier Worthy keeping him on the sideline. You're just less likely to do that when now you need him to be more production than he's been so far.
What about the idea of knowing the Chiefs? If you're gonna make an addition to the wide receiver room, would it be difficult to bring in someone new and ask that person to get up to speed on the Chiefs playbook, and which we know is extensive and complicated, or do you just have to take that risk, Vahe?
Well, just 2 things, and I want to hear you guys react to this, because I might have misperceived this from Andy the other day. But first of all, obviously, you see, like in somebody like Kareem Hunt, how quickly he seemed to be able to get back into things. We saw him split out a couple of times too, and so I don't think that happens if he didn't already have the layers beneath him from being here. But the thing I wanted to ask you guys about is on Andy's call yesterday, when he was asked about bringing in new people, he said something that I thought was kind of fascinating. And I thought he was saying it in a broad sense, that it's easier to bring guys in during the season because they don't have to learn everything. They're just learning this week. They're learning the scaled down version of the infinite playbook. I took it to be about anybody you could bring in. I don't know if he meant easier to bring back the Fab Five, Jody Fortson and McCole Hardman and Juju and Kareem, et cetera. I wonder what you guys thought of that, though.
It makes sense to me. I mean, you're learning week to week instead of getting the 500-pound foundation, 500-page foundation of the of the playbook. Maybe also occurs to me that the Chiefs have added a wide receiver before the trade deadline in each of the last 2 years. One was the familiar game of McCole Hardman, and he didn't have a great impact on the Chiefs the rest of the year until the very last play. The one before that, the previous year, was Kadarius Toney, and had a couple of plays in the 2022 season. Had also the big Super Bowl moment. So maybe that's what we should be looking toward. The Chiefs will sign somebody the next couple of weeks, and they lay low and don't make an impression. And then when the Super Bowl rolls around, they contribute a monster play, and we all say, what a great move, what foresight by the Chiefs to sign this guy. But let's go back to the candidates. They're not going to add anybody this week, and if they did, they wouldn't be up to speed. So we're looking at Juju Smith-Schuster and Justin Watson and Skyy Moore and Hardman and maybe someone off the practice squad. Is there an obvious practice squad candidate, Jesse?
No, probably not. I just think, I mean, you guys can roast me. You're going to. It's fine. They got to get Skyy Moore an easy reception and see what they got in him. I mean, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, you mean
easier, because they got him an easy reception.
Easier, less pressure than a third down, a major one. He's the second most talented receiver they have left outside of Xavier Worthy. He hasn't shown it. He's let him down in big situations. He's not done it so far. He obviously was, meant to have a wide receiver 5 role on this year's team. And that's what they thought about him. But like, if you're just looking around all these things that we're talking about, which is like, who can come in, who can understand the playbook, who can understand what Mahomes wants, who's been around the system, and who has some talent and some giddy and some youth left. I mean, Skyy Moore's the guy. We've seen crazier things happen. Again, this is not a likely scenario. I asked Andy Reid about Skyy Moore this week because I was interested in what he said. And obviously, it wasn't the most glowing of endorsements from Andy Reid, nor should it be at this point. Skyy Moore has been in there a bunch. He has 0 catches this year for 0 yards. It's Sam said it best. Like, it's a bad spot. The Chiefs are in a bad spot. And I think right now, the basic thing that you say about them is what Andy said in the press conference, which is you have to make up for it in the aggregate. You have to figure out a way. I'm sure the coaches are going to look at this and say, how can you scheme things open? And scheming things open is going to mean everybody has to be precise. Everybody has to execute well. And then Noah Gray gets more targets. And Travis Kelce takes on a little bit more. And Xavier Worthy takes on a little bit more. But as far as answers in their room, I mean, I don't think Justin Ross is coming and saving them in normal situations. What are the other ones? Montrell Washington, not really. Nico Remigio, maybe there's some talent there. Again, he showed off a little bit in the preseason before his preseason game where he had the fumble. So I don't know. It's a tough spot. If you're going to get somebody, you probably want to bring him in pretty quickly so they can get up to speed with the playbook. But like I said, the easiest solution right now is probably somebody that you know and that's been around. And Skyy Moore is a 2nd-round pick. And it's not ideal. It's not what you want. But at some point, he's going to have to show the Chiefs that he's needs to be kept on this roster. And for what we've seen from him, route running and having some speed and having some ability to go over the middle and take a hit and have concentration and block a little bit, it's a big week for him. And if I were the Chiefs, I would at least try one more time to get him something easy early, to get his confidence going, because I'm looking up and down this roster and I don't see many guys left that have a bunch of juice.
Blair, I think that the headline on this needs to be Skyy Moore's the guy. In quotes from Jesse. Jesse, you and Sam might not remember this, but Blair and I are old enough to remember a guy named Lee Ilya having this rant about the Cubs fans letting them down, for lack of a better term, and talking about how they're improved in multiple ways. Sure, it doesn't show because we're 5-19, and I feel like that about Skyy Moore. I get what you're saying about all his obvious skills and talent that he does have, and that this cannot seem to convert it into a game. It's a little befuddling, to be honest. I actually don't agree with you that if not now, when, right? And I do agree with that.
I mean, it's almost like if he can't step up here, Sam, real quick, if he can't step up here, then he really shouldn't be on the roster. You know what I mean? Like they should make a decision on him next year and just either trade him for something or get rid of him. But like, if he can't step up in this moment with the opportunity he has and the talent that he has, then they probably should move on from him next year. And that decision probably will get made.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs made this decision on who they think is next best to step up. They kept Skyy Moore on the initial 53. Nico Remigio's on the practice squad. Justin Ross is on the practice squad. Montrell Washington's on the practice squad. Cornell Powell got cut. Like, they've already rated Skyy Moore ahead of their practice squad options. I mean, plus we know that Brett Veach, the one, thing that he has a difficult time moving off of is his pre-draft evaluation of players. There's a reason they took Skyy Moore in the 2nd round. There's a reason they had a 2nd round grade on Skyy Moore. Like, that talent is in there somewhere. And the Chiefs are going to be the last ones to give up on it. And why give up before you have fully invested to see what's there? And like Jesse said, I mean, this is about your options. This isn't about finding a good option. This is about finding your best option. And like I said, the Chiefs have already rated that Skyy Moore is their best option in this scenario. He has to play. And part of his issue is that he has in the past, I mean, we saw the punt return snowball. Like, the pressure has gotten to Skyy Moore. And so part of their coaching this week needs to be somehow relieving the pressure off of him. And Jesse talked about easy passes. I mean, a reverse could be a potential, like, get the ball in his hands in a different way. I think that's why they put him on kickoff returns. The kick return has now changed to where they cannot be barreling down on you when you catch the ball. Like, there is less of a consequence for dropping a kick return than there was the punt return back in the day. I think they've tried to slowly integrate him. The teams aren't kicking it to him. And so they tried to get him down on a 3rd down play. He dropped that, but they've got to coach not only, the attributes, they've got to coach the mental part of the game with him as well this week.
I think the Chiefs coaches do such a good job of playing to guys' talents, their strengths, getting the best out of them, Sam. And so that's sort of what I'm talking about here. Up until this point, Skyy Moore, they wanted him to be a wide receiver. They wanted him to be Justin Watson. They wanted him to go in there and block and have a role and be a guy who, if a guy goes out for an ankle injury, he can step right in and run the right route, all those sorts of things. That's changed now. You know what I mean? That's changed. So you have to figure out, is there more you can unlock from him? Because now you have to unlock that from him. So I totally agree with your point, Sam. I know fans are tired of hearing about Skyy Moore. I get it. And he has not produced to this point. But I'm telling you right now, like, talent-wise, where he's at in his career, I just looked it up. He's 24 years old, plus 1 month. He turned 24 in September, 3 weeks ago. Still a young player, still something potentially in there. And that's going to be a higher upside than most of the guys on the Chiefs roster at this point. So I do think the Chiefs would do well for themselves. Like you said, reverse, an end around, a screen past him. It's just something simple to get him a little bit of confidence, because we've seen when he has confidence, he has produced in some big moments. It has not happened lately, but right now he's the best of a lot of options that the Chiefs didn't want to get to. But he is an option and he's still on the roster, and you made that evaluation earlier. Now it's time to see if there's something.
Well, we've talked about the subtractions. There was a nice addition on Sunday, and that was Kareem Hunt, who led the Chiefs in rushing, and I thought, listen, he doesn't have the body or the strength of the 22-year-old Kareem Hunt, however old he was when he was a rookie, and most of the way through his second season. But from my vantage point, and when we were sitting kind of up and in the corner of the end zone, but up high. When the Chiefs were working away from us, going toward the opposite end, you could see where the holes develop, and you can see the shiftiness and the moves of Kareem Hunt, and that absolutely did remind me of the player that we saw back in 2017 and 2018. So the Chiefs may have them something here with Kareem Hunt. I know that Andy Reid said earlier this week that Carson Steele did not fumble his way out of snaps, but I'm here to tell you, Kareem Hunt is the better option, and I'd be surprised if he was not the leading ball carrier for the Chiefs going forward until Isaiah Pacheco returns. Vahe, you were there. What was your impression of Kareem?
Well, it's funny you spoke about that vantage point we had for our listeners. The press box at SoFi is at an angle that's in one of the end zones. So we had the benefit of seeing his first few runs, how the blocking unfolded. And you could see just from that, the burst, that how we found those kind of funnels and holes. His first run was 9 yards. And I remember thinking that looks different than I thought he would have in him. And he kind of kept looking that way the whole game. In a way, this is just a quirky stat, but I found it interesting. We've been wondering if he's can go back in the time machine at all, or what he's got left. His stats in this game were, at least as a rusher, were almost precisely what they were in his last game with the Chiefs. He had 14 for 69 in this game, 14 for 70 in that game. The 54-51 loss to the Rams in Los Angeles also. So there are, I think, aspects of him that look like they can wake up the echoes a little. And Sam, I think you felt surprised too, but I don't know. Did you get what you thought you'd see?
No, I mean, he has a lot more burst than he showed on tape the past 2 years in Cleveland, and it showed up in the numbers as well. I mean, Next Gen Stats keeps track of how frequently you top 15 miles per hour on every run. And a year ago in Cleveland, in 130-something carries, he topped 15 miles an hour 4 times. On Sunday in LA, in 9 carries, he topped it, or 12 carries, he topped it twice. So already half as many times he reached 15 miles an hour that he did a year ago. And my big concern on them relying on Kareem Hunt was how much he had left, because all the underlying data shows he was the worst running back in the league last year. And that's not just the yards per carry, it's the yards that were available to him and how much he was able to generate. And I think a lot of it is because, I mean, he revealed to us during the press conference when he spoke to us last week that we knew he had sports hernia surgery in the off season, but he said he was dealing with it all year long. And to me, the Browns should, based on this, the Browns should have considered shutting him down. Because the one thing Kareem Hunt we knew he would have was the toughness, the willingness to fight through tackles and to get extra yards. What I didn't anticipate he'd have is, I agree with you, he had some burst left. And if he does have some burst left, I also agree with Blair. I mean, Carson Steele is a secondary option. He's not a primary option for the Chiefs. He's there because of the injury to Isaiah Pacheco. Kareem Hunt played like a guy who's ready to be a primary option for him.
I wonder if the Browns rode him as much as they did because they were a playoff team last year. That was a competitive team. And
he's a free agent. I mean, it's the nature of the NFL, right? I mean, it's like, well, we're not going to use this guy next year, so let's get all we can out of him now.
One other quick thing about him, and we saw it a little bit Sunday, but I think there's more there as we start looking at, how they're going to make up for Rashee Rice. There's certainly room for more running back involvement in the pass game. And he has shown himself to be capable of special stuff in that role. And I find that intriguing. And I think there's going to be some significant level of doing this by committee. I think he's part of that committee, quite possibly anyway.
Caught a shovel pass, right? Turned it into like a 10-yard gain or something. Looked very much like the Chiefs' offense in Mahomes' first season on that play. So, well, once again, we save the stronger part of the ball for the very end of the show. Defense played really well against the Chargers, and once again, Chiefs win the game because of the defense. Spotted the Chargers a 10-0 lead, and after the second possession, the Chargers did not score again. Chris Jones was especially disruptive with 2 sacks. I thought he played his best game of the year. I thought Jalen Watson, the quarterback, played exceptionally well. Very good game all around by the defense. Drew Tranquill had 10 tackles playing against his former team. Are we to the point now, Sam, where we need to think about this as a defensive first team, and whatever Mahomes and the offense can get them, that Chiefs defense will find a way to keep it under that?
Well, I think if we get fully to that point, the Chiefs are in trouble. I mean, this is still Patrick Mahomes' team, but it's no different than last year. We saw this team win multiple games last year on the backs of their defense. But I mean, look, Chris Jones is having a defensive player of the year type of season right now. I mean, he's got to be, top 5 in that category. The way he influenced the Chargers game was remarkable. And look, it should have been a game where he ate. I mean, they were missing both their tackles in that game. Like, this should have been a game where the defensive line dominated. But we've seen that happen before, where they've had to use extra blitzes and that sort of thing, create pressure. Chris Jones tore up the 4th down play, which was the play of the game. He tore up a 3rd and 1 earlier in the game. He had 2 other sacks on different plays of the game. I mean, the guy's just been a monster after signing this mega extension that, let's face it, was not the way that the Chiefs have operated business in the Patrick Mahomes era. They've moved on from these stars, and I've questioned, putting that type of money into a guy who's 30, going to be 31, going to be 32, still playing on that sort of money and that sort of cap hit. But I don't know where they are without Chris Jones right now. I don't think they win the Bengals game without Chris Jones, and I don't think they win Sunday in LA without Chris Jones either.
He's produced. We shouldn't overlook that. He has produced after this contract, and there are questions about whether he would do that once he got the big paycheck. So kudos to him. Again, we'll see how this ages still 3 years, in the time that he has his extension. But give all the props in the world to him right now, because he's keeping this thing afloat, and he's keeping this thing afloat with some other question marks on the back end of the Chiefs defense that have popped up here from time to time as well. Their coverage, especially at the middle level, the linebacker level, has not been that good this year, but they've managed to get away with it because of their pass rush. A big reason for that is Chris Jones.
All right, next up, the New Orleans Saints and a lot of former Chiefs, right, on Monday Night Football with first Monday night appearance. What will this be? The third different day, the third of 6 different days the Chiefs will have played this year, and that means we'll be back next week. Tuesday or Wednesday, don't know yet, but we'll be back next week. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to Monty Davis and Randy Mason for producing this show. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell, Sam McDowell, and Vahe Gregorian for sharing their insights. And we will be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.